I arrived at my parents' house on a beautiful Thanksgiving day. Burnt orange leaves were falling at their doorstep, and the crisp air smelled like pumpkin pie. And even though I love Thanksgiving, I opened the front door of my childhood home with a pit in my stomach. I was hoping that I wouldn't end the night like I had so many family functions in recent memory, crying in the bathroom. As I approached the dining room, I saw the turkey-shaped place cards carefully arranged around the table, and I desperately prayed I would be seated next to anybody but my Aunt Sharon. Do you have an Aunt Sharon? Now listen, I love my Aunt Sharon, and my Aunt Sharon loves me, but that does not keep her from accidentally stomping on an emotional landmine every time I see her. It happened early that year. Her spotlight reached me before the turkey did. I was just about to take my first bite of sweet potatoes when she turned to me and said, "So, are you seeing anyone special?" There it was, the question I had been dreading for months. I knew it was coming, but that didn't make it any easier. Author's note. The potential subject matter for this common familial interaction may include, but is not limited to, college applications, selection of majors and minors, post-grad plans, job transitions, home purchases, dating, engagement, definitely wedding plans, fertility, timing of first, second, and all subsequent children, breastfeeding, and childcare, just to name a few. The answer to her question was no. I was not seeing anyone special. I wished I was seeing someone special, but so far my love life had been a long string of almosts, not quites, and not even closes. But Aunt Sharon wasn't finished. This year, she tacked on a comment I didn't see coming. "I was married with 3 kids by the time I was your age. You're not getting any younger, you know." Ouch. A few years ago, I heard a statistic that I cannot get out of my head. In a rare study of lifespan development, researchers at Boston University and the University of Michigan found that 80% of our life's most defining moments happen before we turn 35. In fact, the average woman makes the majority of her biggest life decisions in the decade-ish between her 25th and 35th, again, ish, birthdays. Welcome to what I like to call the everything era. It's this weird, wonderful, and wildly difficult span of years during which you'll make the most biographically significant decisions of your life all at the same time and in front of an audience. Who you are, what you want to do with your life, where you'll call home, who your people are, who you want to spend your life with, and whether or not you'll have kids. There is a major pressure, internal, external, and even biological, to decide the major plot points of our life all within just a few short years. For women in particular, these years can feel like a giant game of Tetris, with our hopes, dreams, body, finances, and most important, relationships. We're wondering how and if it'll all fit together. We're thinking, okay, if I get married by this age, then I have only this many years before I need to start trying to get pregnant, but I need to get to this place in my career before all of that. All the while, our biological clocks are ticking louder with each passing day. But the trickiest thing about our everything era isn't just that we're making these rapid-fire decisions, trying to figure out our lives all at the same time, but it's that we have to do it in front of an audience, and that audience has opinions. The decisions we're making in these years are so significant, so life-changing, and so public, obvious, hard to hide, that so many of us find ourselves surrounded by spectators and critics, backseat drivers, couch cushion coaches. Those are the pokers, the priors, the unsolicited advice givers. They are the ones who always are ready to say, you know, when I was your age. These opinions about our life, about women's lives in particular, are not new by any stretch. People have had opinions about the way that women live their lives for centuries. In fact, there's been a debate, again, for centuries, mostly by men, about how women live their lives. And there's a name for it, if you can believe it. the woman question. I wish I was kidding. As far back as the 1400s, scholars, doctors, writers, politicians, church leaders, almost all men, have all been trying to figure out where women fit in society. They've been trying to figure out what a woman's role is, where she belongs, what she's capable of, and conversely, what she's not capable of, where she shouldn't be, and what she shouldn't be allowed to do. For most of history, women have occupied a really similar place in society as children, provided for by the men that preside over us, but having very little autonomy to make decisions for ourselves. Just one of a great many examples is that in the United States, until 1974, how fun is that? Until 1974, many banks required women to have a signature from their husbands before they could get a credit card or a loan. Lovely. Very few women throughout history have had the privilege of asking the question, what do I want to do with my life, with any real options to choose from? The answer to the woman question, until very recently, has been that women should be a wife, a mother, and a homemaker. That's been the expectation. That's what we're supposed to do. That's the definition of success. And for some women, that fits them like their favorite gardening gloves. For other women, it fits them like shapewear that's a size too small. You know, like you can get into it for a little while, but like 3 bites into dinner and you are seriously considering ditching those in the ladies' room trash can. Not that any of us have ever done such a thing. In some parts of society, the pendulum has swung all the way to the other side. For women who want to be a wife and a mother and take on the incredibly important and incredibly difficult job of keeping a home and a family going, well, they're told that their dreams aren't good enough. They should want more for their lives. Once again, this leaves a whole group of women locked out of their lives, feeling pushed and pulled into roles that they don't want. Well, other women, like me, find themselves somewhere in the middle. We grew up hearing that we could be anything we want. And so now we feel this crushing pressure that if we can do anything, we should do everything. That's called balance, right? And we're exhausted. This is all exhausting. We're trying to make massive decisions about career, marriage, motherhood, and more. All the while, we have hundreds of years of historical precedent about what it means to be a good woman yanking at our ankles. And at the very same time, today as women, we have more options than any generation of women in history, and we are grateful. But sometimes it feels like we're building the plane as we're flying it. And as we do this, as we're trying to figure out who we are and who we want to be and what we want to do with our lives and who we want to spend them with, the very last thing we need is to be told that we're falling behind, or that we're doing it wrong. And so I'm here today to tell you that you're not doing it wrong. In fact, I don't think it's possible to do it wrong. Here's what I mean by that. As someone who is just on the other side of her everything era, I've spent the last 10 years intentionally figuring out what's important to me and building my life accordingly. Building a life I'm proud of, that I'm excited to wake up to most days, almost all days, and a life that looks and feels like me. And now I've made it my mission to help other women do the same. Not build a life that looks like mine, but build a life that looks like them. And here's the thing I always tell them. There's not one right way to build a life. There is not one right way to build a life, and a beautiful life, it's just not one size fits all. Now, this is tricky because even the most independent thinkers among us are still going to feel the push and pull of historical precedent and societal expectations. You can decide, I don't ever want to get married, or I never want to have kids. I am not interested in buying a house, and I'm not going to have a traditional 9-to-5. And you're still likely going to find yourself answering questions about your unconventional choices. You may even have people in your life, like your family, your friends, your faith community, the latest parenting book author, who look at the decisions you're making and tell you that you're flat out doing it wrong. But here's a hard truth. Just because people have a strong opinion about a right and a wrong way to live a life, it doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean they're right. It doesn't mean that's the right way for you, and it doesn't mean it's the only way of doing things. You know, the rules of what it means to be a good person, a good woman in particular, they feel absolute and unbreakable. But those rules change so much based on our season of life and the year we were born and our zip code and what's trending on social media. And that begs the question, are they rules or are they trends? Are they doctrine or are they preferences? Are they a mandate or are they an option? We grow up thinking that life is a puzzle with a right and a wrong way to put it together. But the truth is, our lives aren't puzzles to complete. They're collages to create. You can live in New York City in a high-rise with 4 cell phones, and you can constantly be yelling into them, buy, 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 no, sell, 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 like they do in movies, you know? Or you can ditch your cell phone altogether. You can move to Bali and work in a bookstore. You can join the military or a monastery. You can have 12 kids or no kids. There's not one right answer, which means you get to build a life and a masterpiece that's all your own. Now, this is easier said than done, obviously. About a year or so after my husband Carl and I got married, I remember the first time someone asked us when we were thinking of having kids. I was shocked by the question. And even more shocked to realize that we had arrived at that point in life when having kids is something that people expected us to do. Like, how did we get here? Part of me wanted to be a mom. Part of me felt like I was supposed to want to be a mom, so it didn't actually matter what I wanted. And then part of me didn't want to be a mom, something that still feels vulnerable to say out loud. You might be facing a similar conundrum today. You might be trying to make a giant decision and you're feeling absolutely stuck in how to get to where you want to go, how to find the path forward. And so today, as we are finishing up, I want to share 3 questions that have helped me the most as I've navigated my own everything era. The first is, what do I think I'm supposed to do? The second is, who told me it was supposed to be that way? And the third one is, are they right? So let's do the first one. What do I think I'm supposed to do? When you're trying to figure out what you want to do in a particular area of your life, we've got to start by identifying what you think you're supposed to do. Now, this is really difficult because a lot of times the supposed to's, the have to's, the shoulds, they've been in our lives for so long, they've become part of the furniture. They're part of the architecture of our lives. They're hard to see. And so I have an exercise I want to do with you really quickly. I want to invite you to close your eyes if you feel comfortable. If not, you can just fix your gaze down. I'm going to read 3 sentences, fill in the blank sentences, and I want you to fill in the blank with just the very first thing that comes to mind. Okay, here's the first one. My family would be so happy if I... Here's the second one. A good life should include... what? And then here's the third one. Good women always. What is it meant to be a good woman in your community? Okay, I want you to hold on to those supposed to's. You can open your eyes. Hold on to those supposed to's. Let's bring them to the second question. Who told us it had to be this way? Now that you are looking this in the face, this should, this supposed to, we have to take a look at where that came from. and if that source is someone that we really trust to dictate the direction of our life. So a couple years after my husband Carl and I got married, we were planning a trip to my favorite place in the entire world, Spain. We went to a restaurant and we had all our guidebooks spread out over the table and we're trying to figure out where we're going to go. And about halfway through dinner, a couple at the table next to us leaned over and said, "You guys are going to Spain? That's so fun. You must not have kids yet." And then they said something that honestly has taken me years to unhear. They said, "It's a good thing you're traveling now, because once you have kids, you won't be able to." Well, a couple years later, during a particularly tense conversation that Carl and I were having about the future of our family, he said, "Steph, I don't get it. When you talk about having kids, you talk about it like your life is ending." And I said, "It is. I have to do all the things now. I have to travel now because once I have kids, I won't be able to." Without even realizing what I was doing, I took an offhand comment from some strangers at a restaurant, and I was structuring my life around it. So where are you doing this in your life? Who told you it had to be this way? And is that someone that you trust to guide you in the most important parts of your life? Okay, here's number 3. Are they right? Now, this is tricky because there's basically 2 options, right? Either they're wrong or they're right. It's worth saying that it is entirely possible that the person who just gave you some advice is wrong. They just very seriously could be wrong. I forget that sometimes. Or they could be right. But again, it is so rare that there is only one right way to do things. And what's right for them may not be right for you. So once I realized that I could still be a mom and still be me, that there were a whole bunch of different ways to do this and that I got to decide, I decided that I did want to be a mom. These are my girls. My girls are Annie and Quinn. They are 3.5 years old, and in just a few months, our family is moving to Spain. I have been fascinated for years with something called the Camino de Santiago. It's an ancient pilgrimage that goes from France into Spain, and people are still doing it today. The thing that is so fascinating to me about the Camino is that there's not one designated starting point. And there's not one exact path you have to take. Camino means the road or the way in Spanish. And yet, there's not one road. There's not one way. The same is true for our lives. So many paths can lead to a beautiful life. We just have to take the one that's right for us. Thank you.